Sekeres Price for Tuesday, May 21st, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you are coming downtown for an event, why not make it a staycation? Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price for rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things with Sean Chessman. We've got a big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto.
Applewood Infinity in the Richmond Auto Mall. So easy to get to. Fabulous sales and service. And once you take the QX60 for a ride, you're not going to want to get out. The 2024s with lease rates from 0.99%. Yeah, there's a zero in front of that. 0.99% for 24 months. That's on all trims. Go take one for a test drive today. Fall in love. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today. Biggest reason the Canucks lost the series. You can vote for injuries, lack of shots, special teams, inexperience. Do so at Sekeres Price on Twitter, YouTube. You think it is something off the list, then we encourage you to get in the comments, reply with the reason you identified as the biggest why they lost this series. Blake, I can make a case for all four. Some of the goals from distance on Archer she loves, and he played fantastic. Don't get me wrong in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they were clearly an issue. You wonder if Thatcher Demko would have stopped some of them. The one shot last night, we know Brock Besser is their best goal scorer. Lack of shots is where I cast my vote. You know, I've been beating this drum for 2 rounds now that they simply are not generating enough shots on goal, but particularly given who Edmonton had in the goal in this series. Let's face it, you had a couple of wide-eyed, fragile goaltenders and just don't think you tested them enough. Special teams, well, the power play was abysmal, absolutely abysmal. So difficult to watch, sucked the life and momentum out of them many times in the series. And, you know, Edmonton's power play is exceptional. They scored power play goals in 5 of the 7 games. Canucks had a nice run there in games 5 and 6, but one power play goal last night, and that's the difference as well, right? And inexperience. And listen to our guests later in the program, Marc Crawford and Frank Seravalli. It is so exceedingly rare for a team really first time in the playoffs, and we're going to call this first time in the playoffs because
they did too. The players did afterwards.
Because of the bubble being so different. To advance beyond a couple of rounds was so light on playoff experience, and so I can see a case there as well. But I chose lack of shots. That partly encapsulates the power play.
That's what I was going to say. I'm going to choose the power play, which partially encapsulates shots. Important to note too, it's not the shots part is not all Rick Tocchet system. There's a serious lack of execution from fanning on the shots to shooting into blocks to flat out missing the net on glorious opportunities like Ilya Mikheyev and Phil DiGiuseppe last night. A grade A scoring chances for the both of them. Yeah. Neither one of those ends up in a shot on goal.
Fair. Both parties share blame here. The players for lack of execution, Rick Tocchet for the system. 3 times in the 7 games they exceeded 60 shot attempts.
And 60 shot attempts is totally fine.
4 times in the series, they were 54 or fewer, including 39 and 33 in games 2 and 3, respectively.
That's not good.
Somehow got out of game 3 with a victory with just 33 shot attempts, only 18 on goal. What I will say is that Rick Tocchet earlier in the series saying he wasn't concerned about shot volume. That seems a little foolhardy at this stage of the game. They very much coach quality of shot over shot quantity. Tocchet has explained it as a possession metric, saying, hey, we would rather have possession, hang on to the puck, wait for a better opportunity than take a shot and potentially give up possession. He views it as a defensive tactic as much as an offensive strategy. And I do wonder whether when, in the light of day, when the emotion has died down and he and his staff look back on this series, whether they'll kick themselves for not encouraging the Canucks to put more pucks on net when you had Pickard in the goal in game 4, when you had Stuart Skinner back in the goal in game 6, and in game 7. The fact of the matter is their shots games 4 through 7, 21, 35, 15, 17. They won game 5 when they had 35 shots. It was 70 attempts that night, their best game of the postseason. They lost the other 3 and lost the other 3 with a totality of 54 shots in 3 games. We talked about it on the post-game pod yesterday, but they don't even manage 21 shots per game on goal in this postseason. And that was significantly lighter than the next worst team in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. And again, that it's a cocktail. Inexperience is also a big part of this, right? Having the presence of mind to not get nervous, to not fumble the puck, to the belief that, when you get nervous, you don't fake the shot. If you're a a defenseman on the point, you fake a shot, you get a guy to go down, all of a sudden you've got a better shooting line. But when you don't have the experience and you're not calm, cool, and collected,
that's fair.
You don't have the presence of mind to do those sorts of things.
That's fair.
And so this first go around for this group, I think we saw some of the speed wobbles that you hope that a year from now they aren't in.
Right. The other thing I'll say about not adapting and adjusting the strategy a little bit more to more shots on goal was you simply did not have the talent on the wing to think that you were going to convert a high percentage of the better quality shots that you were hoping to get, particularly in game 7 when Besser is out. But you'll remember, if you're going to out PDO a team, and remember, we saw this at the beginning of the season where the Canucks just vastly out PDO teams. But back then, guys like Mikheyev were scoring, right? Like you had more guys who were finishing those chances.
October, November hockey is very different.
Yeah, once you got around to March and April and then into May, you had a whole bunch of guys who just weren't finishing.
Well, they're not getting the same free-flowing chances that they got back in the fall, where teams are playing looser. They are making mistakes because they've just got a training camp under their belt. Once teams start to clamp down and start to realize, okay, we got to get our playoff game ready, guess what? If you go back and look at the games from this series, you'll see the Canucks trying to cycle out of the corner, but these are not top-end wingers. The only guys you see successfully peeling out of the corner for shots are Miller, Garland, and Besser. Those are the only guys that are successfully getting out of the corner on the cycle, getting the puck in a soft spot there at the circle, and getting shots away. The rest of them, they just didn't have it. They didn't have the abilities, the skill level to make it work in the playoffs.
Correct.
And that's also a part of the problem.
Which is why I think just throw pucks at net, hope for deflections, rebounds, the sort of greasy, ugly playoff style goals.
But then what you had was a reaction of the Oilers of knowing, okay, they're not getting much success out of the cycle and getting into the circle, so they're going back to the point every time. So then the Oilers just wait for that bounce back pass to the point, and then they defend that with a block and take away the shooting lanes there. So
fair. I mean,
lack of skill. I mean, it just boils down to lack of skill.
The other that I would say here, Blake, is the Oilers were ready for the Vancouver chip and chase game. They knew how Vancouver wanted to play. And so I just don't think that the Canucks forecheckers were in the same advantageous positions that they had been for a lot of the regular season, because the Oilers, knew they weren't really going to adapt what they were doing. They were still trying to get pucks deep and then go repossess them and create a chance in short spaces and short areas we've seen. And look, Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland line had done that with pretty good success through the course of the year. It just wasn't as available to them in this series.
I think I would argue that they chipped and chased too much. That the dogma became so pervasive throughout the lineup that even the skill guys,
right?
You had 3 guys crossing center ice. And their first instinct, and I don't know if this is because Rick Tocchet played this game or what, but their first instinct, send a deep forecheck. And there's room for that.
And oftentimes it wasn't instinct, Blake. It was simply, I'm tired. I got to get off the ice,
I've
right?
been defending
so it
for 40
into
seconds.
a dump as opposed to,
Yeah.
even a chip and
But
chase.
the amount of possession across the blue line, holding on
That's
to the puck with
exactly
it.
it.
I mean, it was few and far between.
100%. When you have fewer controlled entries, you're going to have fewer shot opportunities. And in the instances where they did chip, chase, retrieve the puck, just simply didn't get enough pucks on goal, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. And let's get this straight for a second, because I saw a bit of this on Canucks Twitter last night. The personnel options at Rick Tocchet's disposal on the wing were absolutely fucking horrible.
Yeah, they were good.
Okay. Vasily Podkolzin was not saving the day here. Like, you know, I know people griped about McKayeff and Lafferty, but, you know, Podkolzin and Linus Karlsson combined for 0 NHL goals this year in 26 games.
They weren't the answer. And
so
neither was John Fleckermack.
No, I don't think so. So, you know, there was no cavalry here.
No.
We talked about it going into the playoffs. Are they one winger short or are they two wingers short? Well, with Brock Besser out of the lineup, they were 3 wingers short. And part of that's a rude awakening for Nils Höglander in his first Stanley Cup playoffs. Thought he got better as this series went along.
Marginally.
But
not enough.
He wasn't anywhere close to a 24-goal man that we saw in the regular season.
No. 24-goal man through 2 rounds of the playoffs, I think looks a little bit closer to Connor Garland. Even his 3 goals could probably be 4 or 5 in my opinion, because I think he had a couple of vacant nights himself. But you expect at least 3 out of Nils Höglander by the time you've played 13 playoff games this season.
Yeah.
And they just didn't get that.
Like it's 3 out of Connor Garland, and that's underperforming his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. I know everybody moves the bar every time there's a little bit of success. I think we saw a just conclusion to this Canucks season. Make no mistake, they were a couple good luck bounces away from forcing overtime in Game 7.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had 2 looks at trying to advance to the next round. This team, after all the way we just discussed about the depth of this team and the quality of wingers, that is not a Final Four team in the National Hockey League.
No.
They almost found a way to get there.
Yes.
By happenstance.
With a third-string goalie.
With another third-string goalie and their top sniper out of the lineup. And it would have been a really fun ride. I'm not saying you shouldn't have been hoping that they won last night.
Of course.
By all means, it would have been a fun ride, even if they're out in 5 versus the Dallas Stars. It still would have been fun. Mm-hmm. But I think it was a just conclusion. They weren't winning the cup this year.
Correct.
And now they have to go about and you know what? They get more tired. We see this with teams that make the Final Four, that the following year, it's a tough grind. They've just played a lot of hockey. They played hockey into June, and it's tough to regroup. Maybe it's the silver lining here might be that they get a slightly longer summer here than the Final Four teams, and the management group now gets a little bit more time to think and game plan, given they've got a lot of things to move around here, salary cap penalties and all this sort of stuff. Like, they need the time. Mm-hmm. They need the time. They make the Final Four. It's already into June.
I don't know if Grady is voting special teams, but I did see his tweet about the power play. Finished 13.9% in the postseason, which is down from the 22.7% of the regular season. And let's face it, much of that 22.7 was built early in the year when they were scoring left, right, and center. And Grady also adds, and I think this is also a big storyline in the series, Evan Bouchard outperformed Quinn Hughes. If you were going to win this series, then your Norris Trophy winning defenseman, and I suspect Quinn Hughes will win the Norris Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman, had to be every bit of that, particularly with the third-string goaltender, particularly with Elias Pettersson and Nils Höglander struggling as they did, particularly against an Edmonton power play that you knew was going to score goals throughout the series. I suspect we'll hear on Thursday when the Canucks convene and do media availability that Quinn Hughes was fighting something, much like I suspect we will hear something about Filip Hronek as well. I believe it's an elbow with Filip Hronek.
Quinn dug deep.
A couple of the guys you had at the back who were supposed to quarterback this power play to some degree, or in Hronek's case, be the big, right shot shooting option, and he did score last night, I think we're compromised, and I think that compromised the Canucks power plays.
I wonder if we're going to hear something about a Quinn Hughes hip or something, because his edge
he
work.
looked to shy away from contact.
But also just his edge work, his ability to shake off guys, which he does effortlessly in the regular season with his changes of directions. He dug deep in Game 7 and he tried to do it, but it wasn't with the same ferocity that he used to be able to do it. He wasn't stopping on a dime like he normally does and changing directions. It's like it hurt to do that. So we'll await what that word looks like. But
yeah,
he dug deep. I mean, he had an okay game, and Rick Tocchet threw him out there for all the extra shifts in the third period, and especially late, to try to make the difference. But he looked gassed. Him and Miller looked absolutely gassed because they're the superstars, and they were leaned on as much as they could there in the final couple of games, and they just didn't have anything left.
Let's hear. And of course, when we talk about power play and missed opportunities, none stand out as much as the 4-minute double minor that they had at the end of the first period last night, and just absolutely could not get a single freaking thing going. Here's Quinn Hughes, the captain, on that failed power play.
Looking back, you kind of point to the 4-minute power play for us there, and can't change anything now, but obviously it would have been nice to have more success than what we had there, and then who knows if that changes the outlook of the game.
Yeah, I do wonder. We had talked about it all series long. The Canucks needed to play on the front foot, needed to be ahead of the Oilers in the series. Did a magnificent job of that. 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. We also thought, boy, first goal would be so huge in Game 7, and they had that opportunity at the end of the first period, weren't able to do it. This from J-Pat. Canucks had 1-2-0 lead in 13 playoff games. That was Game 3 at Nashville. Their blueprint in the regular season, as Jeff notes, scoring the first goal.
Mm-hmm.
Did it, 53 times?
They became the comeback kids instead.
Yeah.
Which is
oftentimes
weird.
Got the first goal. Some of the time built off that first goal. And then the Tocchet system can really take hold with the defensive structure, right?
Right.
And in the playoffs, they didn't have multi-goal leads. They weren't scoring the first goal as often as they were accustomed to in the regular season. Jeff says they were too content to sit back, defend. Yeah, okay, to a degree. I mean, I thought that was more
by necessity.
Acute.
I think that
was a little more. Yeah, I also think that was a little more acute on the Edmonton side of the ledger. They do not look great.
No, it's
right down to the third period.
So what does a deeper team like the Dallas Stars do as the Edmonton Oilers try to park the bus with Stu Skinner, who had 88 save percentage last night. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of people extolling the virtues of his play. He had an 88 save percentage.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Mr. Lube. The party's over, but not after a fantastic Vancouver Canucks season that has everybody who follows this team feeling a lot better about the organization, about the brand, and in some cases, the future. A 26-point improvement in the regular season. They win the Pacific Division. They're the best team at the All-Star break. They have finalists for major awards. They have one of the postseason stories in Archer's She Loves. And they have valuable playoff experience that they can carry forward to next year.
A generation of hockey fans here didn't know what that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it. I've got 4 kids. I've never seen them more excited to watch hockey.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen them. They were smitten by the World Juniors, but I've never seen them smitten by the National Hockey League before. And oh my goodness, were they not an isolated case? You look around the community and there are people cheering that you've never seen show an interest in hockey. And for the better part of a decade or past a decade, we didn't have that. So, and I'm not even talking about the business. I could care less if the Canucks make money as a business. the emotional investment of the community into the team
Correct.
is different than anything we've ever seen before. And as a citizen of the community, it's really fun to see.
Yeah, that connection was reestablished. And best part of what sports do, particularly playoff sports, bring together otherwise disparate citizens under a banner of community pride.
Top story
That
brought
happened.
to you by Mr. Lube. Need a tire change or tire service? Mr. Lube provides no appointment tire service and sales. Drop by any time for tire rotation, repair, and balancing. And that's all makes and models, even EVs. 16 locations for one near you. Go to MrLube.com.
And there's an interesting dichotomy that I think happens from here, because I think many fans are moving on or have already moved on in the realization that this was a successful season for the Vancouver Canucks. When you play in the games, it's not that easy. And I'll say this works well for Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin, Rick Tocchet, and the player group. Fans aren't mad at you, bro.
No.
In fact, they're quite, to use his word, smitten with what you did this year.
And in a lot of ways, I know some people wish they had really gone all in, quote unquote, and maybe picked up an extra winger at the trade deadline. Folks, that's not bringing them a cup. And I'll take it the opposite direction. For the assets that you would have spent to get that, given that they gave you a 13-game playoff run that was pretty fun, I think this was the high watermark anyway. I think this was going to be foretold for the most part. If Demko's in the lineup, maybe there's a chance that there's a different story. But
I agree with you on Dallas. There were pathways through the Oilers in this series, and pathways that they didn't walk down in part because of the way they played it. But I
was just saying the same thing.
Generally,
this would have been a lot easier if blah, 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 right?
Fair. So it's going to take the players a while to get over this. Let's hear from an emotional Connor Garland in the post-game dressing room.
Shit, I mean, I've lost games in junior that I still stay up at night and think about, so this will hurt for a long time.
I suspect it's going to hurt Elias Pettersson for a long time as well, because there hasn't been much. The year where he had the wrist injury, we were asking what's wrong with Petey, but he was still kind of in honeymoon period. The honeymoon's over for Elias Pettersson. That much is clear. He dragged out the contract matter this year. He finally signs. He's making the huge money. He said he specifically wanted to be paid more than William Nylander, who was a beast for the Maple Leafs all year and in the playoffs. And 1 goal, 6 points.
And to me, that's flattering.
Yeah. For the most part, a non-factor in these playoffs. Coach specifically said he's not hurt. Maybe there was an injury after that statement from Tocchet, but coach specifically said, no injury there. We're not lying to you on that. And it really continues what we saw in the second half of the season from Elias Pettersson. As Cam Robinson noted, 8 goals, 31 points in 46 games. 8 goals in 46 games for a guy that you're hoping is a 100-point player and a first-line centerman.
In his last 24, that includes the playoffs and the last 11 regular season games, 2 goals. Yep. 2 goals in 24 games. Wow. That's Ilya Mikheyev pace.
Let's hear from Petey, the learnings at hand, and how he's going to let this motivate him through the summer.
No, of course, it's a lot of learning points for me, and I'll use it as fuel when I get back to training this summer. And just can't wait to be back in this position again.
I think you hear a lot of noise from Canucks fans between now. Well, a couple of things. The contract kicks in this summer. The no move clause doesn't kick in till next summer. So a couple of things, and we're not going to get deeply into this on today's show, but as we proceed through the spring and summer, did he get bullied to that negotiation table? Was he willing to play this year out and then was going to look for a change? Does Vancouver Canucks management believe you can win in the playoffs with this player? And of course, what crazy trade proposals are fans going to come up with over the next few months?
I mean, the quick, short answers are, I know the bubble wasn't true playoffs.
He was great in the bubble.
But it was a reasonable facsimile of the playoffs, and he was great.
Mm-hmm.
He looked equally at sea at the end of 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where even yours truly had questions. I thought, wow, I thought he was something. Maybe he's not that something. After all of the magic of his first couple of years, we thought wow.
The question going forward for me is he going to be an NHL superstar or is he just going to be an all-star? He's a damn fine player.
Yeah.
And you like all-stars. But is he going to be that pure number one centerman?
But Matt, this
even if he doesn't get to a Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid status, even if he's just a rung below, is he going to get to, that level? Is he going to approximate those sorts of players and what they've been able to do, get on my back, or I'm going to be the leader through 4 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs and bring your city and organization a championship? That's not
even an all-star pace. He didn't play like an all-star even in the
second half. He was in the first half, of course.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And he was last year.
And not in the playoffs.
Well, he was last year.
Like Nathan McKinnon is the superstar. Mikko Rantanen, is he the all-star? Better than a point per game in every playoff he's ever been in.
Mm-hmm. Differently built player, needless to say, a big power forward winger as opposed to a centerman, but question remains on Petey. Now, what the Canucks can bank on is the culture instilled by Rick Tocchet and this staff this year, and of course dating back to last year when Tocchet took over, right down to the end. Down 3, period 3, with goaltender number 3. They score twice to make a game out of it and have a couple of chances in the dying moments to tie it up. They were so inspiring that even the Celebrini brothers, Aiden and Macklin, in attendance, standing on, cheering on the Vancouver Canucks. Aiden, of course, a Canucks prospect, just finished at Boston University. Macklin Celebrini, soon to be the first overall pick of the San Jose Sharks in the 2024 entry draft. I believe Grady's already flashed the graphic, but Megan Chayka on the analytics side of this game, more shot attempts and scoring chances than the Oilers, but only hit the net 22% of the time, going back to pucks on goal. Their second lowest rate in any single game this season. That was their second most inaccurate game of any of 95 this year. And they still almost won the damn thing. Here's JT Miller on the resilient culture that the Canucks have built up.
So many of our core players learned a lot what it takes and what the emotion of the building and how it can swing so quickly. And I'm sure even right now their hunger to get back here already is going to be there. And I just, I think we have a good thing going here. And I just believe that we're going to be a good hockey team and we're going to have another opportunity at this.
He's had some looks at it. So he wasn't as wide-eyed, and maybe that's why he played as well as he did. But yeah, it was a learning for everybody. Even a guy like Connor Garland's been in the league for a long time.
Yeah, just his second playoffs.
And you listen to him talk after, and it's like he was not even close to being prepared for what the last month sounded like. Let's hear Garland talking about the emotion of the last month.
Yeah, they're the greatest. They really are. It's hard almost, not to get emotional at the end there because they're they are the best. It's too bad we came up short, but we'll be better for this. But yeah, they're the greatest. I mean, this past month has been a blast.
This past month has been a blast.
Talk about the fans there, and boy, what a mean, this season began with reports of that guy and a trade request.
Yeah.
And then they destroyed Edmonton on opening night. And, well, he didn't really want to talk much about a trade request. Bad luck. But you can also understand. You can understand. Tried to trade him all last year. Takers on a contract. Same with Besser. Became indispensable this year. God, talking about their 2 or 3 wingers short. Like they moved those guys out and don't get wingers back. They'd be like
a
full set of wingers.
A team's worth of wingers short.
Exactly. Some administration now that the end of season is upon us. The draft pick condition with the Calgary Flames on the Elias Lindholm trade. So it will not upgrade to a 2024 third round pick. It is a 2024 fourth round pick. So looking forward to the Vancouver Canucks at the draft. Well, what draft?
Yeah.
No first, no second, no fourth, no fifth. 2 sixths and a seventh.
Don't forget about that third. No pressure. No pressure on that third.
Hey, Yanni Yermo Redux, baby.
Do you think there's a chance they make a trade to acquire a second?
I mean, that wasn't really Rutherford's MO in Pittsburgh. And of course, he's 74 years old. So I'm not sure, will he be around to see any draft pick? I don't. I think they're more inclined to be competitive next year. I would be, perhaps a scenario comes along that just blows their socks off and they feel like they have to make a deal. But I would think they're probably going to keep their picks. I would think that maybe they may trade down to see if they can accumulate more lottery tickets in the late rounds. But I don't think we're adding a bunch of
the Toronto Maple Leafs are calling about Archer Shelovs. I'm not reporting that. I'm just saying those are the kind of scenarios that you never know. See a 23-year-old goaltender performing well in the playoffs, and there's a bunch of teams going around there going, we have made 4 trades in the last 5 years to acquire goalies, and not one of them has looked that good.
Yeah. Again, somebody blows your socks off, sure. Loved this tweet from Lachlan Irvin of Canucks Army, interned with us earlier this season. If you only ever look at sports through the lens of wins and losses, you're always missing 90% of the story. What I'll miss most about this Canucks season wasn't the chance at finally seeing them hoist a Stanley Cup. It was seeing Vancouver fall in love with their team again. And I don't think that can be overstated here. This was an organization that was so on the wrong side of people for most of the last decade, most of it through their own doing as well. Bad behavior, disorganization,
scandal,
chasing instant gratification at the expense of the future, getting it wrong time and again, meddling owners, dim managerial finger painting, not architecture, right? And they righted the ship this year on many scores. Look, it even lingered into last year, right? Boudreau chapter was a black eye for the organization, the way that was handled. There were other matters last year that were also issues.
Management and ownership should be marching down to the coach's office and the dressing room and saying thank you to them,
right,
for erasing the bad memories of years gone by with this season.
And Tochet's the shining star of the season, if you ask me. Norris, Hughes may win the Norris. Miller had another sensational year. Demko played very well until getting hurt. Again, the Shelov story and remember the Philip Hronek story in the first half, how great that was. Besser, 40 goals. Like, so many great stories this year. And yet, for me, the guy who stands out is Rick Tocchet, who I'm interested to see the Jack Adams voting, because I think it might be unanimous, Blake. I think he may get every single first place vote.
I don't think his systems are infallible, but his culture change was.
Nope.
And
agreed.
And that was just as important because, as the original tweet from Lachlan points out, you and honestly, again, ownership should be marching because he's restored luster to the crest as he talked about, and people are excited about. People are excited about this brand again, which didn't seem like it was even possible a short time ago. And we don't cheer per se for the team, but we get excited that you're excited. That's my favorite part about doing this kind of a show, is knowing how excited you folks are out there. And I can tell you, for the last decade, we can sort of tell that you weren't that excited.
Yep.
And it wasn't as fun for us either. So
no, it's
we're
great
happy
having
you're
that
happy.
feeling, that spirit, that energy,
Yes.
that crackle, excitement, everything back in the city. And let's face it, and we've unpacked what Rick Tocchet did or didn't do in these Stanley Cup playoffs. And I see a lot of it online, blaming Tocchet for this, blaming Tocchet for this and that in this series. Fair enough. Hey, it was Rick Tocchet's first real playoffs too, as a head coach.
True.
I mean, he took Arizona through 2 rounds and 9 games in the bubble in 2020. He's going to get better as well going forward. The one thing that the 2 things that have come into focus this year, he's an exceptional communicator. He's a smart guy. So I think he's going to be making the necessary adjustments going forward. I'm a big believer, and I'm bought into him being a great coach going forward. And that can't be overstated enough either, that the Vancouver Canucks have a difference maker on the bench.
The one
in a suit.
The one caveat I'll make here, unfortunately, I don't have any specifics on this because I can't predict the future, but learning how to win is not linear.
Nope.
So we'll see what the journey looks like over the next 5 years. There may be, and it might be next year. It might be these 3 steps forward. It might be 1 step back next year.
Like Alain Vigneault, second round his first year, missed the playoffs the next year.
Yeah.
Second round, cup final.
And you look around at all the good teams
something
right
like
now.
that. I could see something like that. We'll get more into that as the days and weeks roll on here. But let's hear from Coach Tocchet. You referenced the clip about putting respect back on the jersey and back on the Canucks name. Used to be a punchline here and across the National Hockey League over the last little while. Used to get those calls, those texts from media friends in different markets. I'm sure you got them too, Blake. What the hell is going on?
How many legs has Jason Bruff had with the Sad Club Commissioner thing? It's his freaking Twitter handle, for God's sakes. But not so sad anymore.
Here's Coach Tocchet on what was achieved this year.
Listen, they put respect back in this city and this jersey. Let's face it. I mean, a year and a half ago or whatever, this guy can't play. This guy's that. And I told them that before the game. It's because they put respect back in that jersey and the city. Fans got something to be proud about. So, and it's all because of the players.
Yeah, well said. Well put, Coach.
And the coach, yeah. I mean, I think, as I said, say nothing of his systems, which largely were pretty good. I don't think he missed a note with regards to the culture and the buy-in.
No.
And right down to, Matt, and this may be self-serving for us, but just the messaging from the coach and the messaging that he got the players to do as well. Pettersson is really the only notable sort of prickly interview.
Sullen.
But everybody else sort of wore the crest well, sold the team well.
It's true. Now winning helps all that, but you're quite right. Like I mean, JT Miller sounded like he relished holding court on a nightly basis.
Yeah.
Was not that guy earlier in his Canucks tenure.
No.
Connor Garland.
And the accountability after losses for Miller,
Dakota
too.
Joshua sounded so upbeat and happy virtually every time we heard from him.
Yeah.
No, it was. I think he created a winning environment, And in part, that creates a fun environment. But I also think he created an environment that people are attracted to and want to be a part of.
Tocchet coming in being labeled the Miller Whisperer was destined for failure in my
100%
books.
right,
Like
though.
that was way too much weight to put on the coach to turn around what looked like a guy that just was a hothead. Like, and how do you just coach that out of a guy? Apparently, you just do this, whatever he did, because he absolutely did whisper JT Miller, and Canucks were better because of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to get to your playoff parlay? Do you want me to get to the menu first?
It was a pretty mediocre playoff parlay for me. Just 4. Just 4.
Every game day, folks, in this postseason, head to games.dailyfaceoff.com. There's a bunch of questions for you to answer there. You pick your side. End of the night, winner gets gift cards. The winner of each round gets some cash. So make sure you're playing the Daily Faceoff Playoff Parlay Challenge daily as round 2 gets going. Games.dailyfaceoff.
One of the things I got wrong, which we haven't really underlined here, was Connor McDavid points. I had him on the over. I thought I saw 3-2 Canuck win, and I saw, okay, but McDavid's going to be involved in both goals. It was a pointless night for Connor McDavid. Like the Canucks wasted a pointless night for Connor McDavid. Like they like honestly, if you had told me that they keep him off the score sheet with some level of regularity, because he had at least one 1-point game too. So like almost in half the games, they kept him off the score sheet in large part.
Yep.
Like if you told me they did that, I'd be like, they must have won the series. Credit.
No, I mean, the way the job they did, said it several times during the series. Tocchet should not only win the Adams, but the Conn Smythe. You know, with the way they adjusted and adapted on the defensive side on Connor McDavid and the job that they did on him.
Now, Leon compensated. He was spectacular.
To say the least.
He was spectacular.
To say the least. He's the man of the series, if you will.
Yeah. But still, McDavid's the best player on the planet.
Bouchard was pretty damn good as well. No, the Oilers had Nugent Hopkins winds up being pretty good.
Yeah, better second half of the series.
Hyman was pretty good. So, you know, the Oilers had a lot of their guys really, Matthias Ekholm, especially early in the series, they had a lot of their guys really come to play. And in the Vancouver case, you can't say the same about Pettersson. You can't say the same about Hughes, Roenick.
Yeah, the only real no-show for the Oilers in the series was probably Evander Kane, who eventually got his.
Yeah,
but
there were a couple of decent shifts here, there, and everywhere. But, yeah, for the most part, the Oilers got more out of a bunch of their frontline players than the Canucks got out of theirs. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. And, oh, Greta, we will miss you. The road game viewing parties were an absolute blast. Thank you to the entire staff there and everybody who came on down to join us, the Social Run Club in particular. Shout out to Jeff and that group. And we invite you to continue going down to Greta to watch the postseason action. 50 West Cordova. It's got one of the great arcades in Vancouver, and at the intermission, everybody scatters to their game of choice.
And hey, we're down to the Final Four. Even though you're not going to gather there to watch the Canucks, it's still fun to watch the Stanley Cup playoffs,
right?
Somewhere.
So head on down to Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. Coach Crawford's going to join us here. Mark Crawford, former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, Stanley Cup winning coach, Colorado Avalanche. He is served as our sort of expert eye through this postseason. We've gone to coach, once a week to see what he saw out there, what his expert eye was seeing out there. So great conversation with Coach Crawford coming up. Frank Seravalli as well, NHL insider, in studio before he hits the road, and I believe he'll be continuing on with the Western Conference Final, Dallas and Edmonton. Some of you were very unhappy with Frank in this series, so we ask him, you feel a little beat up? He's from Philly. Is he a punching bag like Rocky in the first film?
I sure
we even
you,
get into some.
Frank had no bearing on the outcome of this series.
We even get into some mean tweets. Let's get to Bet365 and the bet of the day. And the segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres Price. Look, I like the Dallas Stars to win the cup at the start of these playoffs. And now that they're getting a tenderized Edmonton Oilers team coming off a 7-game series, I like them even more. Dallas, your morning line favorite to lift the Stanley Cup here now that we're down to the Final Four. And I'm going to take them to win it at plus 230.
Edmonton has to fly all the way down to Dallas for Thursday's game after all this. So they would have flown home after game 7 and then flying again to Dallas. Game 1, it's a 2-goal win for the Dallas Stars. So Stars minus 1.5 pays out a plus 190.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. All together, all one word. Coach Crawford, Mark, coming up next.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260-plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. golfnorthlands.com.
Our next guest, a former head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, won a Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche and has been joining us through the postseason here to break down with his expert eye what he sees out there. Our pleasure to welcome back Marc Crawford to Sekeres Price. How we doing, Coach?
Not too bad. Obviously, like all the other fans of the Canucks here, a little disappointed today, but, also pretty thankful with the excitement that they showed over the last month. The city's really alive, and I've been around enough to see the city when it's been alive. I was here in 2011 to watch that great series. And of course, I played in the 82 one and was around in the 94 one. So I've seen all the great championships. And this was a nice run for the Canucks. I think, they learned an awful lot about themselves, and the learning will continue. Unfortunately, you can't have 2 winners in a game 7. And last night they made a valiant effort in that third period, and it certainly was exciting, but they came up short.
Mark, we were just talking before we hit record. You think an experience was a separator in this series?
Yeah, I just think that, the Oilers, and especially their key guys, Draisaitl and McDavid, and you can even go Hyman, and you can keep going down the list to guys like Ekholm and those players. They have been in these situations before, and they know. It just looked like they knew more about how desperate this the need to play a desperate brand of hockey was for them. And I think, again, they were probably playing a little bit for their own personal legacies, but also for their team legacies. And I think just thought that they had more guys yesterday that just understood the situation and how intense you have to be to win in these deciding games to get on to the Final Four. And that's why, again, we talked about this earlier in one of the shows. It's just how hard it is to win the Cup, how hard it is to get to the finals, how hard it is to get to the semifinals. And, that's the disappointment, because, you hear it in the players and you just see it. But that's the learning experience. That is the learning experience for those players, is that you now have in your repertoire that stinging feeling of boy, we didn't get it done. And I think that's what makes you improve the next time you get faced in that situation. And that's what I thought I saw a little bit more from the Oilers.
A lot of fans are saying, why can't you just play like you did in the third period for the two other periods? So why don't you tell me why that can't be? I mean, it actually started before the third period. If you look at the shot attempt graph, right in the middle of the game, half-hour mark, basically, the Canucks start to take over the shot attempt graph, and then they give up another goal against the flow of play to make it 3-0, which really hurt. But why couldn't they find that third period game, which they had in a lot of games, actually? Why couldn't they find that earlier?
I think that's the $1 million question. And again, I think that's the learning that has to happen. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my son before the game. I told him, I said, the key thing is that the guys, they just have to play hard, make mistakes, but play hard, because you usually overcome the mistakes you make out of effort. And it's not that I don't think the Canucks tried, because they tried valiantly, but I thought I saw a little bit more of that game from the Oilers. They looked to be a little bit more desperate throughout their lineup. And again, I think that when you look at the Canucks, the group, I was doing that this morning. Other than Ian Cole, there's not a lot of guys that have a lot of big game playoff experience. And so how do you get that understanding? Yeah, Rick Tocchet can tell them all he wants, and Adam Foote can tell them all he wants. But it's once you've seen it and once you know it, I think it sticks in. And I thought that's what I saw from the Dreisaitl's and the McDavids and a few more of those guys that have been through so much disappointment in their lives that they just, they maybe had a little bit of an advantage of understanding the moment maybe a little bit better.
That fruitless power play, the 4 minutes goes by, and that just seemed to just kill them. Like, the Oilers got so much air under their wings with that. The Oilers had 5 guys across the blue line. The Canucks just couldn't enter.
Maybe that was the problem. We had 5 guys across the blue line and nobody noticed it on the penalty.
There was the one moment. There was a moment where there was 5 guys out there, actually. 4 guys across the blue line. You're right. I mean, at the same time, like, you'd think you'd be able to figure it out on the 8th entry, and they just couldn't figure that out.
Well, again, I think that when you're seeing the same power play over and over and over again, you kind of know exactly what's happening. And let's face it, the Canucks did the exact same thing to the Oilers. I mean, that was basically going on 3 games of killing off every one of their great power plays. And the difference ended up them scoring the power play goal. That was the difference in the game, as it turned out. Now, obviously they played a little bit better in the game than the Canucks did. But when you start to know the moves of everybody, it's about adjustments that you make. And I thought, they made some good adjustments even in game in the third period. They started to come in a little bit tighter as they were making the drop breakout, and they started to come in a little bit tighter to attack the middle, because it just seemed that the Oilers were so in sync with any type of wide entry that they were trying to make, and they were shutting that down continually. And again, that's a compliment to the Oilers and the understanding that they had of exactly what to do to combat the Canucks entries. In the end, that ended up being a difference maker, but I thought it probably started a little bit earlier in the game, because again, it's just the culmination of things. And if you put yourselves in the players' minds, they're understanding what's going on in the game too. They look up and they see the shot clock and the shot totals, and that maybe played a little bit part in it. You're squeezing your stick just a little bit too much because you're not feeling quite, and you're saying, I got to get that puck to the net. I got to do this. I got to do that. And so those are the emotions that players go through, and that they're not that much different than what the fans go through. But then they have to have the complication of going out and trying to perform while they're thinking like that. So again, it's a learning experience. It really is. I know that's small consolation to the millions of Canuck fans that are out there, but it is the reality of our sport. Is you get better as you go along. I heard a great comment this morning about just how good Miller's been playing, but he's now a 30-year-old guy, and he's gotten all this experience in his career, and that's going to happen for these younger Canucks. The Hugheses and the Petterssons, and all their good young players will be better for going through this experience, and it is a culmination of what you learn as you're going through that usually ends up getting you to win those big prizes in the end.
Mark, 21, 35, 15, 17. Those are the shots on goal for the last 4 games. They won the game with 35. They lost the other 3. Did you feel they tested the Oilers goaltenders enough, given who Edmonton was playing in goal and how fragile they were at that position?
Well, I thought what it was more than even that, though. I thought it was the desperation and the shot blocking that the Oilers had. I mean, everybody was blocking shots last night. Watching on TV, they even commented that Connor McDavid blocked a shot in the last few minutes of the game. But you saw Draisaitl diving in front of shots. The guys on the backside. I've heard that there's a significant injury to Ekholm, and he's still out there putting his body in front of everything, and he might have something wrong with him, and he's still doing it. So that takes an awful lot of guts. Anybody that's had any type of injury in your feet, and you just put your feet out in front of those block shots, that's not a fun thing to do. And you just saw how many Nurse and Darnay and Cody Ceci, those guys, they made sure that they didn't let a lot of shots get through to their goaltender. And I think they recognized that they had to play a strong defensive game. And give the Oilers credit, because that's not the Oiler team from 3 years ago, from 2 years ago, from 5 years ago. They didn't have the maturity to understand that you have to win games with strong defense. Your offense ends up putting the goals up on the boards, but it's your defense that wins, and it was their defense that won last night.
Tough question here, Coach. I know, but do you think it's a different result in this series with Thatcher Demko? Shelov's played very, very well. The goals from distance kind of showed the inexperience a little bit.
And he didn't full on steal a game. He kept them in games and was very good, but he didn't full on say nothing's getting past me. I'm just going to win this game on my own. And that's not a criticism, but it's just a fact that maybe Demko could have.
Well, exactly. That's what I was thinking at the end of the first period. Maybe this is going to be one of those nights where just the goalie he inspires them. And, if the Canucks were able to score the first goal, boy, that would have, you think of how anxious the Oilers would have been down a goal, and you think of how anxious the goaltender at the other end, Skinner, might have been had he gotten scored on early in the game. So those are ifs and buts, and if they were candy and nuts, we'd all have a very Merry Christmas. But at the same time, the question about Demko, sure, they'd be better with Demko in the net, a healthy Demko. That was one of the reasons why they had such a great season, was his play, and that's why he's up for the Vezina Trophy and all those sorts of things. I thought it was significant last night, Besser not being on the power play, because the power play didn't look as comfortable last night. They didn't look as comfortable on their entries, and it's always a combination of knowing what your partner is going to do and knowing where he likes the puck and all those sorts of things. So I thought they missed him last night as well. But that's playoff hockey. You got to deal with it, and you got to deal with the injuries, and the Oilers did a great job of dealing with whatever mishaps they had, and they found a way to win.
Mark, just wondering what you would have said to this group after the loss last night, if you're the head coach of the center of the room. Tocchet had talked so much about resiliency over the course of the year, and right there, Game 7, down 3, period 3, goalie number 3, and yet still somehow they make it a game and put some fear into Edmonton before they carry on. What would you have said to this group of players at the end of this game and at the end of this season?
I think a lot of what he said and a lot of what I've said here this morning. Hey, you guys never quit, and that's the comment that you want anybody to come away from that game with. like you'd love to be on the winning side of it, but if you didn't, you want to know that your effort was complete and your effort was continuous, and that certainly was the case. But with this Canuck group all year long, on the other side, it's that you're going to learn from this. These lessons are really hard, and hockey can be a sport that makes you cry. It makes you cry at the absolute toughest of times, and that's, I'm sure there were a lot of tears shed by a number of players last night because these lessons are so difficult. So on the bright side, you learn from them, and then you just have to keep those feelings in the back of your mind, so when you're faced with it again, you have a better understanding of how you can be 10% better, because that's what we're talking about. It's such a minute difference between being a winning team and being a losing team, and it's usually about 10%, and it's in the different battles that happen in the different spots and the important parts of the game.
All right, looking forward a little bit, based on what you've seen in these playoffs, you're the coach of the Canucks, and they're going to come and ask you any recommendations here. Anybody you just can't live without for next season? You've got a high-end free agent in Lindholm. You've got a medium free agent in Zadorov. And you've got a lower medium free agent in Dakota Joshua in particular.
I think all three of those guys have made strong cases to
right.
To
you probably can't have all three. You can't have all three, though.
Yeah, well, this is the one where I say I coach what you bring me. And you leave this to Patrick Albin, and you leave it to Jim Rutherford. Those guys, they understand the decisions that have to be made, and they're difficult ones. I think for this morning, I think they're trying to again do their assessments that they need to make. The immediacy of it gives you that raw emotion. You don't want to forget that raw emotion, even if you're Jim Rutherford, who's been in the game for 60 years, and or you're Patrick Albin. You want to make sure that you keep that raw emotion, because I think that's a big part of the decisions that you have to make, and they're difficult ones. There's no question about it. But throughout the league, that's the way the hockey is now. You can't keep dynasties anymore. There's no longer going to be those New York Islanders of the 80s for us, or the Montreal Canadiens of the 70s and the 50s, or even the Leafs of the 60s, for crying out loud. There aren't those things anymore, because the salary cap has made it that there just has to be so much movement, because you can't keep everybody. You can't afford to.
Well, Coach, thank you for everything these playoffs. You made us smarter each and every time we brought you on. You told us about what you were seeing with that expert eye. I appreciate the time here, Mark. Fairways and greens this summer, okay? We'll see you up in Northlands.
Nothing but. See you guys. Thank you.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice.
Joined now in the Nation Network studio by the hosts of the Frankly Speaking.
West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans. Play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Everybody knows about the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis.
But what's less known is that the stigma around addiction makes it harder to ask for help.
And that's got to stop. Addiction is a complex health condition, not a choice.
Right, and that means people shouldn't have to face judgment at work or from their loved ones or fear the law.
But shame or stigma can cause a person to hide their drug use or use alone.
And we don't want that. People shouldn't be afraid to reach out.
There are supports available, and it helps to know where to start.
The government of BC is partnering with organizations like Sekeres Price to help extend this message throughout our province.
If you or someone you know is struggling, you can find supports and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. You can also watch powerful real-life stories of recovery on the Help Starts Here website. Joined now in the Nation Network studio by the host of the Frankly Speaking podcast of the Daily Faceoff NHL insider, Frank Seravalli, who has been with the Vancouver Canucks through 2 rounds and
1 month in the
It's
Lower
moving
Mainland.
on. Exactly. You were just talking about how great the weather has been until today.
Yeah.
So
It's like a funeral for the Canucks.
It's true. It does. It looks like
Mhm.
the stereotypical
Hey.
Hollywood funeral day.
been saying it all morning. The sun did not actually come up today in Vancouver. All right. We'll start with our poll question, Frank. What cost the Canucks the series here? Injuries, lack of shots, special teams, inexperience. Feel free to go off the board.
I think when it comes to game 6 and 7, I'm going to go inexperience. The Canucks had a kill shot that they could have taken in game 6 in Edmonton, and they didn't really show up. And 4 shots through period 1, then maybe even fewer, 2 in the first period of game 7. They had the Oilers on the ropes. And some would say, maybe even looking at the totality of this Canucks playoff run with an offense that got things done by smoke and mirrors at times. They had some circus-like wins this postseason, and it was amazing to watch, and it was a really fun time to be around this team. The belief that they have is powerful, but if you're going to take down a legitimate Stanley Cup contender in game 6 or game 7, you have to bring more than that. And the composure that the Oilers showed, instead of sitting back and thinking, as Chris Knobloch said, about what could have been. I mean, could you imagine the talk and conversation in Edmonton today if the Canucks are the team that prevails, given all that's gone into this Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl era? It'd be a totally different story. That could have been overwhelming, but they have been through some different battles and trying situations before, which is why I lean toward inexperience. We talked about this heading into the playoffs. Teams that haven't won before almost never run the table and become a team that comes out of nowhere to win. It's too hard. You can't grind your way through 16 wins and fake your way there. Not to say that's what the Canucks did, but I think they had an opportunity and they missed it.
I've been preaching the bright side of this, that they could have stolen this series. They absolutely could have, but it would have been to no end because they probably would have lost to Dallas and maybe even quickly. And even if they pull off a miracle, like they weren't going to beat Dallas and one of the New York Rangers or Florida Panthers. This was not a cup year for the Canucks. They just don't have enough going for them right now.
That's all Oiler fans have been saying is cup year. I mean, like, look at any chat or tweet or whatever it is. This was their cup year, and they showed why. Like, I'm not saying they will win, but they've been kind of building to this moment.
So with that in mind, is it almost a bit of a silver lining here for the Canucks that they don't get exhausted by playing the additional round? They get a slightly longer summer to recuperate and nurse the injuries, and then they get to address some of the holes that they figured out with the experience. They go back in the next season, and next season, if they're in the same position in the second round, I think people will have a little bit more faith in them, no?
Yeah, I mean, the faith will be there for sure. I think the process is going to be really important. I mean, there's multiple ways that you can look at this, and probably all of them will have some kernels of truth. On the one hand, because they had so many circus-like wins, it probably masked some of the deficiencies that this group has had, and it probably masked as unbelievable a job as Rick Tocchet did when they announced the Jack Adams Award winner this week. It's going to be Tocchet. And more than that, he did a Jack Adams-like job in this playoffs with the adjustments that he made game to game. That said, you can't defend your way to winning a second round series. It's not going to work. They tried that, and they need to find a way to adjust that. They need a better balance of attack. The tough part that I struggle with on the whole is finding a path for the Canucks to be better next season.
It's going to be tough.
They took their shot this year. They were ultra aggressive because I think they realized the opportunity and window that they had. Pettersson's contract kicks in. That's got a whole host of questions that are attached to it now for a guy that didn't show up in the playoffs. The support that he got was unbelievable to close out the series. A fan base needs to prop up an $11.6 million player is a bit of lunacy. I would say that there's just humongous decisions lying around every corner. Are you keeping Zadorov or Hronek? Can you find a way to find cash for Elias Lindholm, who was sublime at times in these playoffs? and did a lot of heavy lifting that no one really seemed to talk about. What's up with the health of Thatcher Demko? I think is a fair question to ask for someone who hasn't really played a full and complete 82 game season yet in his career. Where did Quinn Hughes go in these playoffs? How banged up was he? Why was he so at times underwhelming compared to the regular season? Do you pay Dakota Joshua? I mean, we will talk about
Yes,
these
we will,
all
Frank.
summer long. And
Every Friday, buddy.
I'm not going to go overboard, but the point is they had a good team. They took their shot this year and were the work that their management team did was superb.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve full credit. And I think the biggest takeaway, if you're looking for a positive sign today from the Vancouver Canucks, not only do they believe, I hate the cheesy, hokey play for the crest on the front, not the name on the back, but Rick Tocchet, man, he hit an absolute home run when he said after the game that his message to his team heading into Game 7 was, you've put respect back in this crest and in this city.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, the Vancouver Canucks have been a laughing stock, 10 years now, almost. And now this is a destination that not only is it an unbelievable place to be and live and play, but that's a coach that people want to play for.
And he absolutely is. And it doesn't take away from an award-winning season that he's likely to have, as you pointed out. I think they had the horses to be a more attacking team. I think we saw that in Game 5, and we saw that in the third period, and even really the last 30 minutes entirely of game number 7 as well.
But where'd it go?
Well, why? Yeah, where did it go? Was it his doing that it didn't come out earlier and when they needed it to? Like, did he spend so much time turning this team into? And I will admit, I did not think this team could play the defensive hockey that it ultimately ended up playing. So kudos to him for that. He enriched the defensive side of the game. But did it come fully at the expense of the offense?
It felt almost like, hey, this team had so little structure. We're going to overcorrect to beat it into them. And they did.
Yeah.
And the fact that they dialed in and listened is like, again, full marks. And Quinn Hughes said, hey, we had to get the stink out of this team. Well, the stink's gone.
Yep.
There's been plenty of OxyClean and Tide that's washed through that. But now it's about correcting back to the mean. You've got to find a way to find a happier, healthier balance for this team to open up the offensive horses on this team to create, because we saw it in spurts and we just didn't see it enough. And they were never even, I'd say this goes to the Nashville series too. They were never truly threatening in any game that I was like, man, you know what? Like, this team is going to run you over and score the goals necessary to win, which is why I hate, I think it's a little bit unfair, or maybe a step too far, a bridge too far, to say that the way they won games was with smoke and mirrors. But the truth is this: they finished the playoffs with a negative goal differential, and they had one game of the 13 that they played where they had 30 or more shots. Like, it's just not good enough.
Was it too much jump and chase?
Game 5 against Edmonton, 35 shots, 70 attempts, by far their best offensive performance. And as Frank says, just one of them through 13 games.
You had Stuart Skinner in net, who showed zero signs of being able to answer the question of, are you any good?
And Calvin Pickard, Frank. And Calvin Pickard.
But you never asked the question.
Fragile goaltenders, and you did not ask enough questions of them.
That's the missed opportunity.
It brings me back to Tocchet and the defensive system you talked about. And can you only go so far with it? Like, what's the risk of Tocchet falling in love with the PDO here, where he continues to preach quality of shots over quantity of shots, and of course has to get the saves on the other end from Thatcher Demko to make that work? Like, this was a hell of a PDO year in the first half of the season for the Vancouver Canucks. Everything was going in, and their goaltending was stopping a bunch of grade A chances against. I just hope Tocchet doesn't fall in love with that formula going forward.
I think they need more.
I think they need more shots.
I agree. I'm not concerned that he will, though, because I think he's smart enough to understand and sit back and say, hey, we need to adjust here.
I agree.
That said, when you look at these players, part of it was on their own execution too. Like, Rick Tocchet is not preaching for Elias Pettersson to throw the puck away carelessly as many times as he did because it seemed like he was trying to avoid contact. That's not the coach. So at some point, questions need to be asked of the players, and there were plenty asked of Pettersson during this round, and rightfully so.
5 times in this series, Frank, 30 or more shot attempts either missed the net or blocked. So to the execution side of things, you're right. There were 5 different times.
How long do you think Ilya Mikheyev is going to be thinking about that one?
Oh, wow. A lot.
PDG all alone doesn't hit the net.
Garland had a couple good looks.
Yeah.
I mean,
Lafferty.
none bigger than JT Miller hitting Nikita Zadorov in the shins. I mean, that's the game right there. I mean, they produced after all that, the timeout, after the Darnell Nurse, team huddle on the bench, they still got the look that they wanted and couldn't convert.
But maybe the problem is that the guys getting the big chances were PDG.
That's it.
And Sam Lafferty, and not and Mikheyev, and not players of better quality.
Which is my next question. How many wingers shy are they here?
They're like 3.
Yeah.
and
just that.
And look, the team you just played has been through this exact thing.
Yes. Yeah.
How long did we talk about the Edmonton Oilers being multiple wingers short of a top 6?
Yep.
A legitimate top, and then they went out and found Evander Kane and Zach Hyman. And like there are ways to do it. They have 5 or 6 of the top 6 pieces you need to win. And yet, even then, we were still asking questions about the Oilers' secondary scoring in this series. So, I think of it all the time. It's like golf. You figure out your putter, you can't get off the tee to save your life. You can hit a wedge shot and you're hitting greens all day. You can't make a putt. It's like sometimes it comes and goes, and it has a rhythm and rhyme all to its own.
Lastly, my dude, hope you enjoyed your month-long dance here with Canucks Twitter.
It's a special place.
I understand. Hey, first of all, in his defense, beginning of the season, he comes on, he tells us the Canucks are going to the playoffs. Demko's winning the Vezina.
Your own president wasn't sure, by the way. Just like want to
Canucks went to the playoffs. Demko is a Vezina finalist. He's not going to win it, but close enough. Canucks Twitter beat you up a little bit here in the last few days.
I mean, look,
feel like a punching bag, Frank.
The guy from Philly is somehow an Oiler fan.
Exactly.
In the minds.
The guy from Philly is taking a Rocky Balboa style beating here.
They're both orange teams, but
you mentioned Philly. I grew up there, born and raised, and every single day when I worked at the newspaper there, my inbox was filled with way worse than what I got from Canucks Twitter.
Oh, okay.
That said, it was fun to be here, and it's fun when you're in the throes of a playoff series for people to perceive your coverage one way or the other. I only view it as just dead nuts straight. Hey, I don't. This job is stressful enough. I don't care who wins or loses. And most of the time, the only team I root for is the one that gets me home to see my family quicker.
That's right.
I've been in Vancouver and back and forth. I went to every one but one of the Canucks playoff games, home and road, 26 out of the last 30 days I've been gone. Trust me, I don't have a dog in the fight, but it was fun to, interact and see it. And, the other thing about social media is you run into people on the street and they always have nice things to say.
That's it.
They never say anything to your face, but that said, I mean, I did get a few.
Were some highlights? Did you have some highlights for us?
I did get a few beauties. You want to have a little?
Sure. Give us
a
little
apologies
mean tweet.
to. Is it Jimmy Fallon that does mean tweets?
I forget who did.
Yeah,
one of the late night.
So I tweeted out a photo of the Canucks. Actually, a video of them being saluted by their fans. I mean, think about that. A dejecting, disappointing Game 7. Your team didn't really bring it. And instead of being upset, they faded this team for minutes with a standing ovation, towels waving, go Canucks, go. I'll never forget for my life the JT Miller chant echoing through this city after Game 5 and the let's go Petey trying to pick up a player. But this one is from Ashton. He says, Frank, don't pretend like you have some nice words now. It was incredibly obvious you didn't think Vancouver belonged here and didn't give them a sniff of respect. Don't act like it now. Take your Oilers jersey and move along where you'll get swept easily by Dallas.
You and your Oilers jersey, Frank. Again, to review, one of the only guys I can remember in September saying they were going to the playoffs. But go ahead.
There's one
Remember
more.
the way we reacted.
Yeah.
Like, really? You're the one?
Yeah. One more. I will always remember how you homered the Oilers in this series. You never, ever appeared on our shows or stations, you bum. Handshakes, LMFAO. They beat a third-string goalie. If Demko is here, it's curtains for your Oilers.
Oh, your Oilers.
Yeah.
Demko wasn't here. I mean, does anybody think that they were the better team for the series? Like,
no,
they weren't.
No.
It's not that. This is what got me into trouble, apparently, with Canucks fans. My only point the whole time was the Oilers have a higher ceiling than the Canucks. That's all I said. And if that offends people, I think it's fact. But more than that, that isn't always what decides one playoff series or game 7. That's not how this sport works. But when the Oilers could get to their top level, they have, for the first time in NHL history, they are the first team that has 3 20-plus point players through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's inarguable that they have a higher ceiling, but that almost wasn't enough.
They've been working at it for the better part of a decade here, trying to build around Connor McDavid. I would hope that they are a better team on paper.
Players of that stature almost always win Stanley Cups in the National Hockey League. And guys, think of it. If Edmonton had gotten some goaltending in this series,
it could have been quick.
Yeah.
Could have been quick.
The Oilers could have been up 3-0.
We will continue on, Mr. Seravalli, with weekly hits here through the playoffs and, of course, into the busy off season of June and July. Thank you for this.
My pleasure. What a city.
Farewell.
Yeah.
Farewell. Hope you come back and see us here in Vancouver soon enough.
Can't wait.
And we'll line up Ashton and some of these mean tweeters. Maybe a little face-to-face. They'll be kinder, gentler.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.